everybody! Here's Handless Jacques! Stay tuned to find out why he's called Handless Jacques.
Hey babe, it's Handless Jacques time!
Yep.
You ready to go?
It's so early.
As my dad often says, the bump is good. He means that when you have plans and plans change, it's best to go with the flow and embrace whatever the new plans are. The bump. It can lead to exciting new discoveries. We had plans to take a completely different detour on April 9th, but the folks we were going to meet had to postpone. So with Ohio still on our minds, we started poking around at other spots we could visit that weekend. That's when we discovered Handless Jacques. So I am maybe irrationally excited to see Handless Jacques. He checks all of the boxes of a quintessential roadside attraction. 1, he's really big. 2, he's got a really interesting history. 3, he's beloved by the local community. 4, he has no hands.
When we first found out about Handless Jacques and charted a course up to Marblehead, Ohio to see him, we never expected the incredible story we were about to uncover. And you'll also probably be wondering why this episode looks like it was shot over the course of like 8 months because of all the wildly different weather. But we swear this was just 2 weekends in April and May. That's just how spring is on the Great Lakes. This is Handless Jacques. He towers 30 feet high, smiling down at West State Route 163 below, peeking out from behind this BP sign.
So, here are the basics. Jacques is made of fiberglass, though he was not made by International Fiberglass, the company that made the muffler men.
We asked a lot of people, and no one is precisely sure who made him, but an old newspaper clipping we found indicates he was built in Indiana.
But he's been here a long time, happily greeting visitors to Marblehead for 50 years.
Since then, he's brought joy to millions of visitors in Marblehead. He's even inspired some lovely artwork, like this print that you used to be able to pick up at the Mickey Mart that he stands outside of, and this beautiful painting by artist Bailey Van Kirk. Jacques wasn't always handless. He used to be just normal old Big Jacques, or Has Hands Jacques, whichever nomenclature you prefer. He stood outside of a restaurant named, you guessed it, Jacques. For a long time, the conventional wisdom was that this is him here, presenting a tray of his famous roast beef sandwich to the drivers on Lexington Avenue in nearby Mansfield, Ohio in the 1960s. By 1972, we've heard 2 different stories. Either the restaurant closed due to poor business, or Jacques was removed first because he no longer complied with local sign ordinances. Either way, that's the story that was passed around through oral histories and later online, that he started out on Lexington Avenue and was moved here, and somehow the move was so traumatic that his hands were damaged and removed. And it's in this spot where everyone fell in love with him. Shortly after we rolled into nearby Port Clinton, we checked into the historic Island House Hotel. It dates back to 1870 and a cavalcade of who's who who've stayed there over the years. A bunch of presidents, Bogey and Bacall, Jolt and Joe and Miss Monroe, Bob Dylan. Looking back, I probably should have asked the people there more about that. But instead, all I ended up talking about was...
What can you tell me about Handless Jacques?
We used to come here and eat in the restaurant over there. I'm sure I saw Jacques when I was I was 7 years old. How could you forget him? Especially as a kid, he's like 38 feet tall.
Yeah, he's an icon.
I mean, yeah, I don't think there's any other icons. I mean, maybe the Statue of Liberty or something.
And Handless Jacques.
Yeah.
As we learned almost immediately when we started researching this detour, this is a big moment for Handless Jacques. For the first time in 50 years, a restoration project is underway. It's being done by a fellow named Mike, a developer in the area who has since retired to Venice, Florida. He only wants us to call him Mike in this video because he wants the focus to be on Jacques and the community, not on who he is. Back in the summers between 1966 and 77, Mike would camp by Lake Erie here with his family, and a vivid memory from those days was seeing Jacques every time they drove through. He told us the legend was if you waved and said hello to Jacques as you arrived, you'd be blessed with good luck. So after visiting again recently and seeing that Jacques was in a bit of disrepair, Mike decided to donate his time, return to Marblehead, and restore Jacques to his former glory. He partnered with the Greater Port Clinton Area Arts Council to do so, and on our April trip up to see Jacques, we met up with Jessica Denton. She was helping spearhead things from the council side.
He's kind of like the unofficial greeter of the peninsula when you come off the bridge and you pull off here. For me, growing up as a kid coming up here, he was the sign that we were by the lake.
The rough estimate of his arrival as lake greeter is 1972. He was moved there by local resident Dave Young of Young's RV Center in Fremont. Dave owns the gravel lot next to the Mickey Mart that Jacques stands across from.
This is your main thoroughway to Marblehead Lighthouse. And East Harbor State Park is right over here, and that's a big tourist destination as well. So he gets a lot of visitors.
And naturally, being the greeter of Marblehead for 50 years comes with some wear and tear.
He's lost his hands, he's lost his tails on his coat, his feet are a little rough, but you know, he's still standing.
Still standing, but obviously in need of a lot of love.
When I moved up here 8 years ago, I wanted to start a GoFundMe to get him some hands because like it just bugged me that he didn't have hands.
And now that dream has become a reality as Mike, Jessica, and the Greater Port Clinton Area Arts Council started a campaign to restore the Maître D of Marblehead.
We just started the campaign in February.
And since then, it's blown up. Their posts for donations and support have gotten thousands of views and responses. Like, even wacky art is art. And this is something people have such fond memories of. I hope he gets the support he needs.
From an art standpoint, for the Arts Council, he's an iconic piece of large-scale art that you don't see very often anymore.
And thus, with Mike's restoration talents, the support of the Arts Council, and the fundraising efforts from the local community, the quest to restore Handless Jacques has begun. But then, if you've been watching Just a Quick Detour since the beginning, you know that occasionally bombshells get dropped in these interviews. And that's when Jessica said this.
So he has a twin brother, Pierre, that used to stand outside of a roast beef restaurant in Mansfield.
Hold on. Mansfield. That's this guy, remember? Well, that's right. This is not Jacques. Upon closer inspection, it should have been obvious. If you compare the stances side by side, the Marblehead Jacques has less of a lean.
You've heard of a shock jock, but this is a Jacques shock.
It turns out that Jacques actually came from a much lesser trafficked satellite location of Jacques roast beef in Marion, Ohio, which is about an hour north of Columbus. So, over the years, the lore just developed that the famous Marblehead Jacques was the other guy in Mansfield, since his location was much more popular. But Handless Jacques is actually from Marion, and so that begs the question, where the heck is this other guy?
Our heads were swirling. Somewhere out there was a second Jacques. As we stood watching the sunset by the Port Clinton Lighthouse, and I caught this shot of, yes, an eagle over the water, we realized what we had to do.
We sent some emails and made some calls. We got in touch with a local historian named Timothy McKee, who claimed that the Mansfield Jacques had actually been spotted out in a field near I-71, not far from his original location. He sent us this image with some GPS coordinates as a guide, but this was from years ago. No one knew if it was still there after all this time.
He also sent us a satellite photo of another point of interest nearby, a cowboy statue. And that's when I noticed what it was next to, the Buckeye Express Diner, somewhere I'd actually been a few years ago. When I told Timothy that, he said the guy who owned the land that the diner is on is the same guy who owns the land that Pierre at least used to be on. It was a man named Terry Byrne.
Some sleuthing found us Terry's number, so we called him. We told him that we were working on a video about Handless Jacques, and we had connected a few dots. And he started to laugh. He knew what question was coming next.
Hey, I'm Terry. Cassie. Hey, Cassie, how you doing?
We met Terry Byrne at the Buckeye Express. He hopped into his pickup and told us to follow him.
Okay, we are on our way.
We snaked through some back roads near the diner until we got to a gated private lot. Terry unlocked the gate and let us inside. Could this be it? Could Jacques' long-lost twin brother be hiding just beyond?
There he is. He's straight ahead.
Oh.
We found him.
Ladies and gentlemen, we present to you Big Pierre.
Wow.
Hidden away but not forgotten. Here was the famously photographed roast beef giant from Mansfield, Ohio.
Well, he's been at this location for probably 10, 12 years. Has been lying on its back for 5 decades.
5 decades is exactly right. After we found him and told Timothy McKee, the historian, he got back to us with this newspaper clipping he dug out of his archives. That's Terry's father removing Pierre from Mansfield on July 30th, 1972. We can't say for certain, but if you look close, it seems as though the hands have been removed by the time this photo was taken, indicating that the handless nature of both these big guys might have been a result of transportation logistics. Here's another shot we got from Joel Baker of American Giants. This is when it was transported out to the field around a decade ago. As you can see, like Jacques, Pierre's hands are nowhere to be found, but there are some key pieces here that the Marblehead Jacques is missing. The giant Jacques roast beef sandwiches. And the reason all of this is still out here? Because thankfully Terry, like Mike, is someone who cares deeply about preserving this quirky piece of roadside history.
So you've had to save him from destruction, too.
Yeah, several times I've gone out of my way to keep him from being scrapped and bulldozed. But I knew one day I'd want to rebuild them and get them to stand tall again.
Terry told us he wants to get working on it right away and hopes to have Pierre patched and standing up again as soon as a year from now. He also told us his and Mike's top secret plan about what he wants to do with it once it's fixed.
He suggested making a bobblehead out of it.
Oh, that's a great idea!
And so, yeah, I said, Mike, man, that's a great idea. So I think that's going to be the plan, and I'll put it up at my diner. So it'll be the world's largest bobblehead.
So, just to clarify, this guy in the field here is another Jacques from the same time period and also handless.
He's the one from the semi-famous photo, sometimes thought to be Handless Jacques in Mansfield. Handless Jacques in Marblehead came from a restaurant in Marion. No one has a photo of that location.
And the good news is they're both being restored.
A year from now, he'll be standing tall and have a big smile on his face.
And so we bid Pierre goodbye for now and grabbed a quick bite to eat at the Buckeye Express before heading back to Pittsburgh. And just as a quick side note, this diner is worthy of a whole episode of its own. Its roadside American charm levels are off the charts. Anyway, on our way home, we swung by the Wiener King on Lexington Avenue in Mansfield. This is the spot where Big Pierre once stood some 60 years ago. And check this out. If you look closely at this concrete slab that a picnic table now sits on, you can see remains of the original middle braces where Big Pierre once stood.
His back foot was here, and then his front foot was here.
Wow, I can't believe that's still there.
The restaurant was inexplicably closed on a Sunday at like 3 in the afternoon, but with our zoom lens, we were able to peek inside at the far wall where a little piece of Jacques' history, that old photo, is still hanging. And so we headed back to home base to prepare for the next road trip, but we wouldn't be away from Marblehead for long. After all, there was a big restoration happening.
Babe, it's Handless Jacques time again.
What time is it?
It's Jacques time. Okay, we're headed back to Marblehead to see Handless Jacques. Not handless for much longer because Mike is up there right now. He told us to come up and take a look at his restoration progress.
How you doing? You're Cassie.
Yeah, and I'm Ryan.
When we arrived back up at Handless Jacques on May 7th of 2022, things looked much different. Jacques was surrounded by work platforms and his restoration was underway. This is Mike, a lifetime friend of Handless Jacques, back in Marblehead after a long time away, here to give back to the community he loved so much when he was younger. He also came prepared for us, with a costume, complete with Jacques' hat and red bow tie.
I grew up out here, I lived out here, I built out here, came back. This thing's been here my whole life, it's been here forever. And somebody needs to stop wondering about it and make it wonderful.
So that's precisely what Mike's doing. Dave Young, he's the RV guy, remember, got Mike set up in this trailer behind the Mickey Mart. That's the Restoration Command Center. The restoration itself is all volunteer driven.
I've had great volunteers. These guys came out and they built this work platform.
The platform has 2 levels, and Mike invited us up for a tour of all the work he's been doing to Jacques since we last visited Marblehead.
Shall we take a look?
I would love to.
Let's go.
From up on platform 1, you can immediately see the improvements up close.
Jacques is looking great from last time we were here.
For instance, remember those broken coattails?
And we've repaired the coattails. They're very rough yet, but we're getting there.
Yeah, they were just completely chopped off.
They were sawed off
last
to
time.
get this on the flatbed truck, and they were never put back on. They were just tossed away.
From up on the second platform, we got a unique view of Jacques.
Man, you really feel how high up you are and how tall he is up here. It's taller than you think.
Not just from a new height, but from the inside. And that gives you a look at how Jacques was created in the first place.
They had a rough skeleton, and you could see some of the rough skeleton in here, and they sprayed it with foam, then they carved it, and then they put this fiberglass over the top of it.
And now that we could visualize how Jacques was made to begin with, Mike explained what he was doing to patch him up.
You fill the hole with foam, and then shave it off, and then you put the fiberglass over the top of it.
And Mike's already done this in a ton of spots all over Jacques. Here on his cummerbund, down here on his shoes, a few spots on his pants, and up on his coat. And apart from the bodywork, another major change had already taken place. Ever since Jacques lost his hands, they've been replaced by metal cage, but no more.
This is the cage
Yes.
that was on it for 50 some years.
Wow.
We thought it would be a nightmare to take off, and it took 3 or 4 minutes.
And with the cage off, Mike told us perhaps the biggest news of all.
This is where his hands have been gone for 52 years, and we're gonna put them back on.
That's right. Handless Jacques will be handless no more.
And they're being built right now. Shake your hand, welcome here, and give you a little thumbs up. First time there's been hands on this thing in 52 years. Not yet, but fingers crossed, they're coming. Get it?
And the plan for the hands?
If you got this plumb, you know it's exactly where it is, you know where the pipe is.
The method for fitting the hands wasn't anything more scientific than this piece of cardboard.
I've never done anything like this. And the guy that's building the hands says, I've never had anybody give me anything. He goes, that'd be beautiful. So that's what you do. You just figure it out, put it together. Lightweight hands with a cuff already, and we're gonna just fit them right on here and glass it over.
To get to the top, Mike said he'd need more than just a work platform.
The only way we can fix it from here up is through a lift.
At the time of our visit, Mike was still working on the logistics. As for the grand scheme of things though, he plans to head back to Florida for the summer. He doesn't want the restoration to be a distraction during the extremely busy vacation season in Marblehead, and he'll be back in September to finish it up.
Hopefully I'll have it ready to just put the hands on, paint it, and we'll be done. Something tells me there's a little more involved.
And so Jacques is in caring and capable hands, with Mike, the Arts Council, and the community coming together to make sure he keeps smiling down on travelers for decades to come.
I'm just here to give back to the community and give back to the kids. Hopefully they'll have another 25, 30, 40 years that they can enjoy this.
So once again, we waved farewell to Jacques for good luck and headed off on our next adventure. But we did have one more detour to make before our Jacques journey was complete. Because remember how we said that no one we talked to could find a photo of Jacques in his original location in Marion? Well, throughout all of this, we had been in touch with Brandy Wilson. She's the director at the Marion County Historical Society, and in the final days of our research, she sent us this photograph. It's from their collection and was taken in 1970 when the Ohio Department of Transportation was planning a widening project on State Route 95. An unremarkable photo at first glance, but if you look way off to the right, just within frame, there he is. The Marblehead Jacques with hands. Brandy told us that's 1165 Mount Vernon Avenue. It's a Wendy's now. The building is a new construction, but the patch of grass where Jacques once stood is still there. We're not sure if the trend of doing the Jacques lean in front of the Wendy's is going to be a trend that catches on, but we wanted to try and start that anyway. A few days later, we got a text from Mike. It said, FYI, I had some great help and a lift was donated. I have it ready for paint and hands. Hands will be done in the fall and I will finish it then. And so that's that. If you want a road trip to Handless Jacques while he's still handless, now's the time to do it, because come fall, he'll just be Jacques once again.
And now in June, we just got this update from Terry Byrne. Check it out. The concrete anchor has been poured, the body has been moved out of the weeds and patched, Pierre's head has been repainted, and yes, even the giant spring has arrived. That all means that the world's largest bobblehead will be standing tall over the Ohio Valley beside the Buckeye Express Diner this summer.
And one more thing. Mike and the Greater Port Clinton Area Arts Council are still in need of donations to finish the project. The best way to donate is on this website, gpcaac.org/Jacques. Scroll to the bottom and click Donate. We've got a link to that page in the video description for you. And hey, it's tax deductible.
Mike's gonna be painting Jacques with boat paint so it can withstand the weather, and that's not cheap, so that's what a lot of the donations are gonna be going towards, plus other supplies he needs to complete the project.
Well, that's all for this quick detour, and we'll see you again for the next one.